Well, thanks, Dan. I'm delighted to be here, and I like being able to share this with you, and hopefully you'll find some inspiration and maybe some lessons learned in the story. I did put disclosures down. The one that's actually most relevant to this is that I'm now the president of Sage's Ingenuity, and we would love to try to work with you through that organization, which is our for-profit arm of Sage's that focuses on innovation. We actually have a venture fund now, and we're setting up a consulting arm that will actually potentially pair innovators with people that could help them in their innovation pathways. So I think that's going to be a resource to keep in the back of your mind, and I'm happy to field questions about that at any point in your future if I can be helpful. So my innovation story starts, I was actually a biomedical engineer as an undergrad. Always was kind of a math and science geek. I loved doing stuff like that. Thought about doing biomedical engineering as a career, but I also really liked medicine, and so I dove in. Partially why I went into MIS, honestly, is because of the cool gizmos and devices, and I thought it kind of made sense, and the problem solving of surgery just fit with engineering, so all that lined up. But I didn't really do much with the engineering degree until I was honestly a junior faculty. And my program director from my fellowship had gotten the opportunity. He's been a serial inventor, and he was working with this company called Barosense, which was coming up with an endoluminal approach for obesity, which is this device you can see here. He got a nice job to go be chair somewhere else and left Duke. And so I was on the Duke faculty. He said, hey, can you step in and be their surgeon to help them develop this device further? So I actually, for a long time at Duke, spent about a day a week with this company. We were doing iterative development of devices, doing a large number of animal labs to test the prototypes out, ended up coming up with a device we thought made a lot of sense, did a trial of that for the FDA, and the FDA at that point had endpoints that they wanted the endoluminal devices to be comparable to lap band, and this was just shy of that, and so did not make it through the FDA, and so all this time and effort ended up just dying. So part of being an inventor is you can't let that dissuade you from keeping going, and I learned a ton of how the iterative process works with that. Duke had this cool rule, and so if you're looking at being an innovator and you want a job, Duke had what we called the golden handcuffs at Duke. 20% of my time could be spent on a device outside of Duke, and that was actually okay. But you can also invent within Duke, and they get a royalty share, and that part is pretty standard, and how that's broken down is pretty standard. But every institution has their own rules. So if you're looking at a job as a faculty member and you want to be an inventor, find out what their deal is, and that may make the difference to where you go. And I also think the deal can be one of the things that could be negotiated as part of coming in, particularly if you have no inventions when you're showing up. They may be more willing to give you something like that that's not real money on the table day one. But what happened with Barosense is that group that I was working with, at that point, there was a new thing called notes. And they said, what do you think about this notes thing, which is the natural orifice surgery? Could we start a notes company? And so that was the owner of the company was a cardiologist. He'd actually invented the carotid stents. And he had a buddy who was a venture capitalist. And there was an engineer. And then there was me. And we sat down one weekend and started brainstorming about, well, maybe not a notes company. Maybe we could kind of back off a little bit and do a laparoscopic platform that could then become a notes platform. And so we actually came up with a single-site surgery platform that combined the best aspects of laparoscopy with actually some of the cardiology thoughts. So we made these tunnels that wires could go through that had end effectors that were like laparoscopic instruments. So we called it flexible laparoscopy, came up with this platform, had some rigid instruments that could go through that, and actually brought this. I got to do the first in human with this down in Paraguay. We went and got venture funding for it, got through the FDA, so I got to operate on patients with this. which is kind of fun. You have to talk to your institution. That's a real disclosure. So then I had to actually let my patients know that I invented something and that I could profit from actually doing surgery on them beyond what they were paying me. And most of the patients thought that was really cool, but Duke did require an extra consent for that. The cardiologist then got really excited about robotics. So he brought this forward to convert our laparoscopic platform to a robotic platform, which we actually hired a variety of engineers. And the Spider, the single port incision delivery extended reach, which is what that was called, the robot there is on the left. I'm not sure the details because around this time I actually left Duke and went to another institution. I actually was at that point becoming a leader in societies and was getting negative commentary about being conflicted. So I actually sold all my stock in Transenterics and was no longer on the advisory board, which was great because I paid for a chunk of college with that stock. And after that happened, the thing did not get approved by the FDA. So that device also didn't make it through the FDA. The company, though, had bought the Senhance robot from a company in Europe, and so that's what Transenterics is now selling. So that's the successes, experience, and not success. You probably don't know this robotics company, and that's okay. But I also had a couple other things that came up that I thought were interesting. While I was at Duke, I thought we could actually do something better on anastomoses, and I thought about coming up with a bioerodible stent that might be really great for leak prevention. I was told that wasn't patentable by the Duke attorneys, and there was something called magnetic anastomoses that I did work when I was a junior faculty in 2004 and 5, that there was a patent from another company that I was told this was not going to be something patentable. Now, if you're looking at the stuff that's coming out with new companies, both of these are now being developed by other groups. So the lesson with that is don't always trust the first opinion you are told, and actually maybe Duke turning these down, I should have taken them somewhere else and figured out ways to patent. So I probably could have gotten advice from other patent lawyers, and then these could have been my companies, and that would have been really awesome for my retirement plan. But, so don't be dissuaded if something like that happens, because you could do something more. Other things I've done, new invention disclosures, lots of ideas, have some patent applications. I was actually had an idea that was in Shark Tank last year that was led by one of my residents at Stony Brook, and we started a company called Surgical Props that we're still working on some of these things. Stony Brook had rules that were pretty similar to what some of the Duke rules were, but their licensing is so slow. So this thing that we presented last year in Shark Tank, and we decided to come up with the company, is stuck in the licensing process of Stony Brook. They required that we use their patent lawyer, would not let me have anybody else, even if I paid for them, on the patent. And we aren't convinced that we like what the patent lawyer submitted, so I don't want to pay for a license and have milestone payments until we see what's going to happen from that patent lawyer. So that's where we are on that. So these are sometimes sad stories, but I did pay for some college, and I've learned a ton that's both good and bad. And I've met lots of friends along the way, and I'm not trying to dissuade you, but think about the puzzle, think about your ideas, and try to carry things forward. Some lessons that I think are important: don't assume that somebody else is working on it. If you have an idea, chase it. If somebody tells you that's not how we've always done it, that's a good thing. If somebody asks, why would you do that? Don't let that dissuade you. And if they think your solution's too simple, maybe that's a better way to go. And some of these things, I still remember somebody asking me, couldn't we just have a better Q-tip? Because we were using Q-tips to clean laparoscopic ports when I was a junior faculty. I'm like, what, you want a giant Q-tip? Are you going to call it the Ken swab? Because it was Ken, my PA, who came up with this. And here was a student or scrub tech in the OR actually came up with this thing that's now marketed and used in probably most laparoscopic cases. So I was the dissuader in that case, and I feel badly about it because I think my PA could have been pretty rich. Other things, this is a very famous cardiac surgeon Altmaier to Tom Fogarty when he was a medical student. He said, only someone as junior as a medical student would not understand why this won't work. And that was when Fogarty was proposing the Fogarty catheter, which is now used in a lot of cases and really started his whole empire of device innovation. So 2 kinds of different innovative solutions that you guys should think about if you've got this kind of bug for doing something new and different. And this could be a new procedure with existing products, which I think is a fine way to innovate, and that's probably the most common way surgeons innovate. It's definitely more straightforward, or come up with a new product. If you do a new procedure with existing products, this is the easiest thing to do in your institution, but there are some steps that I think you need to do. Be intentional. Think about the steps, think about what's new and different. Discuss it with your team to get buy-in. I've definitely seen a lot of innovative surgeons who actually lost credibility at their institution because they didn't do this. So make sure you get buy-in from your leadership. Disclose to your patient that it's something new. I think, when I started single port, this was very new, and I made sure my patients knew it was a new thing, and that kept me safe and made them excited about it. Give a real informed consent. That doesn't mean necessarily writing down on the consent, this is the first time I've done this, but you should tell your patient that. And then study it and share the outcomes. And there's some IRB nuances to that, so you don't have to necessarily do the IRB right away. Duke actually told me not to do these things under IRB. They told me to retrospectively study them. It made it a lot easier. But that was because of a discussion I had with the IRB chair. I would not necessarily think that's the right way to go, but that's what I was told, and I documented that conversation. So think about it, have that conversation with your places. Most people will say do an IRB ahead of time. New products are definitely different. And this is find previous inventors and talk to them. I think that's going to help you find mentors. Hopefully you'll have some of those in your institution, because you may have the golden handcuffs where your employment contract ties you to working in your institution unless they tell you otherwise. Ask your leadership, find your resources locally, and that's definitely how you start. You're going to need a team, and I know you guys heard some of this morning, but for any of you who weren't here, there's going to be some engineering, there's going to be some medicine. Hopefully you're the medical experts, but you could be the business experts, you could be the engineering experts, but I think having a team brings in collective ideas that's extremely helpful and will help you be stronger. And then the tech transfer process, it's good to understand this early when you're coming up with a device. Usually you have to do a disclosure to your licensing and transfer office. And they may say, this is great, we want to know more. They may want to be part of your innovation process. They may tell you they're not interested, which honestly is the best answer from your institution if you can get that, because it takes all those handcuffs away. I was intimidated early on about spending my own money for that initial patent, but let me tell you, now that I've gotten devices that are further, you want to get away from those regulations of your institution as much as you can. And the process, if you stick in your institution, however, this is a very short, optimistic timeline from what a tech transfer process should work. And that's, they'll do a meeting with you, that'll take some time of discussion, they'll have an evaluation process, they'll give you feedback, and then they'll work through the patent prosecution, which can take years. As long as you've done your patent, at least your provisional, you've got to have something on paper. You can start with your device pathway, and you can even sell that device. But that takes time to get licenses and to get through your R&D and bring things out. Outside partners, if you've gotten the green light to do that, I think is a really nice way to go. But there's also caution with this and how people will have their assets protected more than yours. And that's why it's smart to get a legal help too. But before you go outside of your institution, really make sure you're protected. I used to say I wish I was the guy who invented the endo-stitch. The guy who invented the endo-stitch sat down with his partner from Covidien at the time and talked about this great idea, but he had nothing on paper. And he essentially gave his idea away, and he got nothing for that. So don't do that. Really make sure you're protecting yourself before you give your ideas away. And then that'll help you so that you can keep your ideas and actually benefit from them. And then when you think about where you're going, do you form a new company? Do you partner with people? Do you assign your IP and give it to somebody else, or do you license it? And I put down here 4 lines just to think about how much out-of-pocket money are you spending? How much control are you going to have about what happens? I've definitely talked to inventors who sold their idea for it to be put on a shelf by a company just so that they wouldn't have competition to their product. And I think that could be very sad for you, but you would also get some money. Time to revenue, if you're doing things yourself, can be a long time. Chris Schlachta was talking about the valley of despair with startups. There's definitely a time when you just keep spending money until you actually have product that you're marketing and selling to people. But if you assign IP, you get money from the company who's going to do that part. And if you license, you may be able to get some money earlier. And then potential revenue, obviously, the more that you do yourself and the later that you sell something, the more revenue you keep. So I went into a lot of detail about some really good things that happened, some things that were a little bit sad that happened, and some missed things I had. I know there's more people who've had better successes, but I think I've learned a lot in the process, and I definitely can help you avoid some of those pitfalls. So thanks for letting me join and share with you today.